It follows you. Follows you. What is that?
Yeah, you had a copy of that.
The other half of this
but that just means that you can't do that in place.
No. We go to them, we look at the place, pick out a few things. Then they tell us, then we go there, have a look ourselves, pick out what we can deal with.
St. Peter? Is he right?
To have knowledge in the like field, you know what I mean? Like you're in a starting again.
Right, identification. I'm trying to get those online shoots on. Tomorrow I'm going to try to put most of the audio on. It's a diabolically slow process, but I'll try to get it done tomorrow. It'll be under that health section under training and navigation. So Starbucks, how did they start? What was the word that jumps to your mind there? Yeah, which word do you think? Ship? Yeah, they started with innovation, which was coffee with in that Italian coffee scene with atmosphere. And since then they've built their location, because again, most franchisees are real estate businesses, and they've built prime real estate locations everywhere, and then also build a brand on the back of it, which is more enduring. Most of them start with innovation. Microsoft didn't start with innovation. They started with a feature, which was the operating system, as the industry standard. They bought their innovation rather than innovating themselves. And what they've built is a distribution structure. You can get it pretty much through every retailer and also online. So they've built their distribution location. They've also, if you talk to Microsoft themselves, say, where is your real competitive advantage? They say, well, they've got the best value software. And since I've been trying to use this non-Microsoft software to build these tutorials, these online tutorials, I've got to say you do get a lot of value for money for Microsoft. They've also built security as a fairly reliable software supplier now for the industry standard. Would you debate that, or
yes.
Yeah? What would you say?
I think meaning
Security?
security.
Why?
If you do security, you want to debate.
Oh, I'm meaning viruses.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Yeah, but no. Security is a big organisation, safe organisation to deal with. That's the real meaning. You debated over there. What's the problem here? What would you say?
Same thing with viruses and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. In comes Linux, and what did they attack? Well, they've got again, find a weakness in the competitive strengths. So they found the Achilles heel in Microsoft. They went after their operating system, and they developed a new operating system, a new feature. They also went after value. How do they do that? Are they cheaper than Microsoft?
Yes.
Absolutely. Some open source freeware. So they hit them pretty hard head on there. They also followed that with efficiency. You've got to match both efficiency and value together. If you're going to make it free, then you may as well also have an open source community or free development too. So that's where they've really got an advantage against Microsoft. They went after how did they get better distribution or different distribution? You just download it, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 70% of the cost of a computer company like Microsoft is in the sales and marketing effort and distributing their software. So Linux don't have that, so they took them on there too. Then they linked up with IBM, or IBM linked up with them, and then added the security dimension, because that's the only thing that Linux was missing, the fact that it's a safe pair of hands to deal with commercially. And so IBM brought that to them. Intel starts with innovation, I guess, and now they've got reliability. Also, they've got OEM contracts with every PC manufacturer, so they've built their distribution. Do you think that's really worked? Intel Inside? Does it really mean anything to you? Yeah, I'm not sure, so that's why I've got a dotted line here. I don't think, because it's a chip and it's inside, I don't think the brand really means too much. So, well, yeah, it's secure, isn't it? It's, they've built a brand, haven't they? Yeah, everyone knows it. That's why I've got a dotted line. I think, you know, it sort of counts for something. How did Domino's start? Home delivery, so which word? Innovation and... Yeah, it started with innovation and responsiveness, or quick, you know, fast home delivery, and yes, location. They then went and built those small outlets against Pizza Hut, which had the big restaurants against them, so they built location and distribution. Mercedes and BMW, here's two car manufacturers. What words jump to mind here? Quality? I agree with quality. Very well engineered cars, so quality, that certainly is there. Anything else? Yeah, reliability goes along with quality, I suppose.
Brand.
They've built a brand. So they've built that, but hasn't everybody got a brand? And they've also built their distribution system, all their dealerships everywhere. Yes, they've built those, but their brand really means quality. That's what everyone's known for. But how are they different? How's Merc different to BMW? What's the feature that's different? What's different between a Merc and a BMW? What? They're luxury. They're both luxury. Engines, but they've both got engines. Sorry? Different engines, yeah. Wait, what's different about them? Hang on, he's almost there. Speed, what about power? Who's got more speed and more power? Mercedes? Which is sporty? Yeah, BMW positions themselves as the performance machine for the younger driver. So they've turned their customer into a feature, and the older driver, or more prestige, is Mercedes. So they're actually differentiating their customer and turning that into a feature there. What's BMW's tagline? The ultimate driving machine. Yeah, so they're really after the younger segment. How about Ford? If you look at those two, you sort of know what they stand for. What does Ford stand for? It's got kind of brand, and it's built its distribution and location. Any other words is it built? Not really. It's always struggled to build a word there. So it's quite an inconsistent message out there in the marketplace. But that's one company that really does need to work on what it stands for. So what we're going to do now is, as I said, when I'm out working with companies, sometimes I'll just relate back to another company to figure out how to take them forward, what the strategy is. So I'll give you quite a few case studies now about each of these words, in the hope that maybe you can apply one of these things to a company you'll deal with. Let's have a look at feature first. John Pemberton mixed coca leaves for a cocaine hit with cola nuts and exhausted tea leaves for a caffeine kick. Added sugar because the thing tastes like shit. And then some alcohol. And what do you get? What do you get?
Bex.
What?
Was that Bex or whatever?
Who said it? Coca-Cola. Yeah, absolutely. That's Coca-Cola. It was sold as a medicine in Atlanta, Georgia, in that pharmacy, Jacobs Pharmacy, in 1886 for 5 cents a glass. Even back then, they blew their marketing budget. They sold $50 worth of Coke in the first year, and they spent $74 advertising it. Pemberton then died of a morphine habit a couple of years later and passed the business on to Asa Candler, who was an investor. He bought the business and in 1893 registered the logo and trademarked it, and then invested heavily in advertising Coca-Cola. In 1899, two lawyers then made a proposal to Candler to bottle Coca-Cola. So they said, Asa, you make the syrup and deliver it to us in 44-gallon drums. We'll take that, put it into bottles, add some gas and water, and so you've got two companies. And that's when the company got split into the bottling company and the syrup company. So Coca-Cola is two separate companies. Now, Candler sold the syrup for $1 a gallon and gave away the bottling rights. The bottling company expanded. These two lawyers did actually do a good job. They spent about $120,000 in those days. That was a lot of money. They made it the best-known product in the US by 1902. They got rid of the coca leaves, unfortunately, in 1903 and removed the cocaine. In 1915, they then developed this 6.5-ounce bottle. It was designed to fit perfectly into a thirsty person's hand. And over those years, they made 6 billion of these green bottles. Yep.
Does that mean if you're not thirsty, it doesn't fit as well?
Correct. Then what they did was they found a weakness in the competitor's strength. A weakness in the competitor's strength. That's the way to compete. And who's their big competitor? Pepsi. Pepsi came in and found a weakness in their strength. We'll talk about this in a minute. In fact, in 1916, there were a lot of imposters. There were, in fact, 153 imposters that got removed in the courts because Coca-Cola trademarked and registered their name. There was Candy Cola, KO, Coconut Cola, Bola, Cola, Walla. A lot of them, they got rid of because they were claiming it.
One brand awareness, they're used to that model. They're used, the market's used to that model, yeah, and markets take a long time to switch, yeah, correct? Anything else?
They marketed that was the ideal.
Secondly?
They marketed that was the ideal or whatever.
That's the ideal, yeah, they spent a lot of money there. Yep, so it's hard to go and reverse that, isn't it? Anything, what was the other? That's right. Yeah, that's the other problem. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to respond. The other reason they couldn't was, yes, they got that 6.5-ounce bottle out there. They couldn't easily scale it up to 12 ounces. It was during the Depression, in the early 30s. Kids wanted quantity rather than quality, so they bought a lot of Pepsi and they captured market share. But these things are delivered through vending machines, and there's hundreds of thousands of vending machines fitted to deliver those bottles and also fitted to take a nickel, so they couldn't just simply change the price and halve the price and give you the same bottle. So again, Pepsi found a weakness in the competitor's strength. What should Coke have done? So 2 for the price of 1 in the vending machine, but then you'd have to go through the mechanics of the vending machine and change all that. So that would have been an easy way of doing it. Yeah. Anything else? What I would have done was set up a different company to Coca-Cola, just like Qantas set up Jetstar. I'd set up another version of Coca-Cola, different brand, and then take Pepsi head on with that other brand and keep Coca-Cola up in the high class, or the other segment of the market. Anyway, Pepsi's larger bottle changed the focus from, you used to drink Coke out of a vending machine or from a drugstore, you'd get it because of the cocaine. You drink it publicly. Pepsi you drink at home because you buy it from the grocery store. There weren't supermarkets in those days, and you consume it in volume. at home. Anyway, 50 years later, see how long it took to change? Coke's sales fell by 3%, Pepsi's went up by 12%, and then Coke finally launched larger bottle sizes. So in 50 years, they didn't change, and then they decided to be better. So then Pepsi thought, right, let's find another weakness in Coke's strength of being the first cola. Coke always says it's the traditional one, the original and the best. So Pepsi found a weakness in that strength. Any ideas? What does Pepsi come out with? It tastes better. What they did was, the taste better is the next one. Pepsi released the Pepsi generation. Now, they found stars back in the 50s and the 60s to do this, but they used later on Britney Spears and Michael Jackson, a whole bunch of youthful celebrities in those days to call it the Pepsi generation. What they're saying is, this is drunk by the youth, and anyone that drinks Coke is a boring old fart, basically. So, and Britney Spears bought a $7 million can of Coke. Yeah, she just signed the contract a week before with Pepsi for doing the Pepsi generation. Sat here on Bondi Beach in Australia and was drinking a bottle or a can of Coke. That's the bottle. And the paparazzi snapped her, and they ripped up the contract. Pepsi ripped up the contract. So it was a $7 million can of Coke which launched. Anyway, in '68, 7-Up then launched that. It was called a lemon lime soft drink. In the States, if you bought a can of lemonade, you would not get that. You'd get the traditional lemonade. They call that a lemon lime drink. We call it lemonade over here. And 7-Up, eventually that was owned by Pepsi, is an alternative to cola. So it's the un-cola. Again, another weakness in cola's or Coke's strength. Coke then decided, no, let's be defensive. Instead of being attacked all the time, let's defend ourselves. We'll call ourselves the real thing. We're the original, we're the best, we're the real thing. Pepsi then found a weakness, another weakness in Coke being the real thing. What was that? You said it before? It tastes better, yeah. They launched they attacked Coke's taste, and they launched the Pepsi Challenge. What happened was they stuck 2 bottles, one's Pepsi, one's Coke underneath that. They poured the colas, and then you'd have to taste them and figure out which one tastes better. Lots of people in the US chose Pepsi. Why? Yeah, it's 9% sweeter, and Americans are addicted to sugar. So anything sweet, they'll choose. Australians aren't. Coke's got about 70% market share here. We're less addicted. In fact, when I drink Pepsi, it tastes a bit too sweet for me. Anyway, so Coke thought, all right, let's do another survey. And we'll put 3 things here. I'll put Coke here, I'll put Pepsi here, and then I'll release new Coke, which is even sweeter than Pepsi, and get them to do a blind taste test and figure out which one's better. Which one did everyone pick? The new Coke, because it was even sweeter than Pepsi, the new Coke. Did Coca-Cola do the right market research though? No, because new Coke bombed. It lasted 3 months, and then it bombed. What market research should they have done?
Their actual customers.
Yeah, talk to the customers about what? How sweet is too sweet? Probably not, because Americans will. I mean, even if you filled up a glass of sugar, they'll still drink it and say that's the best. No, it's not the sweetness. They should have been asking a different question. If you drive through any street in America, and that's why you'll see on the can, classic, the old Coke, the original formula. What they should have been asking the customers is, what do you think about us changing Coke's formula?
And I've lived in the States. In any street in the States, there'll be 2 or 3 houses with an American flag flying in the front yard. Americans are very patriotic. I think it's because of the Civil War. They had to fight for their country, so they're extremely patriotic people. They're mad. And it would be like, to change Coke, which is a 100-year-old history now, to change that would be like burning the American flag. And so when it was released as new Coke, it lasted about 3 months, and then they had to pull it and return that can with classic Coke written on it, put the old formula back. In fact, what they had done a bit earlier, I think about 6 months prior, they took
the sugar out of Coca-Cola and put in corn syrup and actually changed the recipe. All they did was not market it, and people didn't even notice. They actually did change the recipe, not do the marketing. So they could have changed it and not told anybody. Pepsi then bought 7-Up, and they found another weakness in the cola's strength, which was the cola nut itself. It actually adds caffeine, and it's like giving your kids a cup of coffee before bedtime if you give them a glass of Coke. So they marketed that to the parents, and they said, look, we don't have any caffeine, never had it, never will, and tried to switch people to 7-Up by finding another weakness in the strong. So that's an example of looking for an Achilles heel in a competitor and hitting them there. Let's have a look at the range. We'll go through each one. In 1886, two brothers migrated from England to settle in Perth, WA. They secured government building contracts and they started to form a group of building companies. In 1887, Arthur and Robert purchased their first sawmill and then expanded into both the sawmill and timber distribution. The company built its network of sawmills in WA and then went public in 1952. Any ideas? James Hardy? No? There's their first store. I said I've been giving you a lot of examples about growing by acquiring customers and penetrating. This is an example about acquiring competitors to achieve penetration. Bunnings then secured its distribution system and started to vertically integrate. I said that you usually do that when you hit maturity, and that's what they did. They started acquiring more retail stores to sell their timber through retailers. I guess, yeah, usually at this end of the curve, you're focused on the customers. When you get to maturity, you've got most of the customers sewn up, so then you start buying competitors as a way of expanding. So focusing on that. So in 70, Bunnings then acquired some more sawmilling operations over in WA. Then they moved into retail and bought McEwan's, which was that was the biggest hardware chain in Victoria and South Australia. Then they closed a few of the unprofitable McEwan stores and opened up that, which is what their first Bunnings warehouse or their superstore. In 94 they opened that up and they expanded range. They had the biggest range in hardware and also they focused on making it very cheap. They didn't mind about having massive warehouses with lots of stock because that stock has very long shelf lives, so it's not going to perish. They didn't mind stacking it high. They became a hardware category killer. They were deep into hardware. They opened a new warehouse every 3 months, but property development in Sydney and Brisbane is very difficult because most of the high visibility large blocks, because they need a very large block for one of those warehouses, has all got something on it. So it's very difficult to expand in the metropolitan areas in Sydney and Brisbane. So in 2001, the West Farmers Group bought Bunnings, and then they bought the Howard Smith Group, and the Howard Smith Group had BBC and Hardware House. So that gave them instant penetration in Sydney, Brisbane, and New Zealand. So they've pretty much got national coverage. Their target market, they broadened their product range by adding garden supplies, closed most of their small stores. They've still got quite a few left. Their target market were males, DIYers between 25 and 55, so they knew exactly where to advertise on one of these informational DIY shows. They're turning over about 7 billion, profit of 800 million. They've got 194 locations, so they're all spread throughout Australia and New Zealand now. They've closed a fair few of their small format stores, and they're now growing quite quickly in these trade centres. That's grown over the last couple of years. So I guess that's what they're really good at, a massive range of hardware deep in one category. They also market that, the lowest prices, value. Are they really the lowest prices? No. No? Does that stop you from looking? Yeah, if you're a normal person DIYing, if you see something like that, you think, well, I probably can't go wrong by going to Bunnings. It probably is the cheapest. If you're in the trade, though, it's not. You go to a proper trade supplier and you get prices much better than Bunnings. They're also marketing that. They've got the best locations. Yeah, they've definitely got that. And in retail, it's all about those three. They're the major things in retail to get. In their ads, they're trying to market their people and service. Have they got great service? No. So that's really not that credible. They should really just stick to these three marketing notes, but they're trying to put in their ads their people right now. They've also got the best efficiency because they're the largest and they've got the best buying power in the market. Okay. Let's have a look at innovation. King C. Gillette invented the safety razor with disposable blades in 1901. How's this for growth? He sold 50, in 1903, he sold 51 razors and 168 blades. That went to, 51 went to 90,000 next year, and 168 blades went to 12 million blades next year. That was what he sold, the safety razor, and there was a blue blade inside that. What was the technology that he was substituting or replacing? The cutthroat razor. So this was, you got hurt using one of those usually. This was quite safe because it put the blade into a compartment at a certain angle. It was quite safe. The only problem with the blue blade is it would rust. After a few shaves it gets wet, it rusts and then it nicks you. So the blue blade, about 60 years later, got replaced. Wilkinson's sword brought the stainless steel blade out as an innovation. So Gillette had to quickly regroup, and 10 years later, Wilkinson's sword brought out their stainless steel blade mounted inside plastic in an optic called the protector. It was mounted into a plastic unit at an optimum shaving angle. Gillette then quickly counted. It had 55% of the wet shaving market. They brought out the Track 2, and the blades, it was a double blade this time, so they innovated into plastic. That wasn't disposable. You kept the handle and you slid the blade off and threw the blade away. So it wasn't a disposable razor. Bic then came in, and remember Bic's an entrant. In 75 came out with the orange razor. In 79, Gillette counted, while Bic was on the beaches, Gillette released the double blade, which was totally disposable this time. So it counted that one, and Bic ended up spending a lot of money to get in. It lost $25 million in the first 3 years to gain a very small chunk of the market against that. So it counted very quickly while they're on the beaches, and you can keep them from growing. In 77, Gillette then released the Atra, which was an adjustable, that head, you didn't throw the handle away, you slid that in and out, but that adjusted. And then they innovated it again and cannibalised the product, and that's totally disposable with a swivel head too. So that's an adjustable, disposable blade. Then in 89, they released the Sensor. Underneath the blades are tiny springs. It's using, I think it's nanotechnology or some very fine technology. They invested $200 million in design and development of the manufacturing processes to apply this laser welding system to the shaving system. So underneath there are springs. It gives you a better interface between your skin and the blade. And that laser technology was previously used in the heart pacemakers before Gillette picked it up. And they spent a lot of money on about 29 patents there. Then they released 3 blades, the Mac 3, and they also patented the lubricating strip as well in 1998. So they keep innovating and cannibalising their product. They still, disposables now represent 40% share of the razor blade market, so they've held on to it quite well. Now, how many blades have they got out? 5? You sure about that? How many? 6, yeah? Where's the 6th one? On the back, yeah, you flip it over. So the Fusion's now got 5 on the front and then 1 on the back. And they continue to innovate. They're releasing new things all the time. But anyway, now the market, they've got over 85% of the wet shaving market. It's been purchased by Procter & Gamble, so it's very hard to find out what revenue they're doing. And now they're promoting all-over body shaving for both ladies and men. Mainly to grow the market size. When you're dominant, you're that much of a leader, you find new ways of applying your technology to new markets. So it's good to lose a few. Price or value. Let's have a look at that. Carl and Theo. These are. I'm going to give you an example for value of the richest men in Germany, and by being the most heavily discounted. Offering in the market. Then I'm going to give you an example in about 2 case studies time of an engineer that owns the highest quality brands in the world, and he's the richest man in France, and he's an engineer, but he also owns these elite brands. Anyway, Karl and Theo were born in a working class suburb of Essen, Germany in the 1920s. Their father worked in the coal mine and Mum had a food store. They fought in World War II and they spent some time in the POW camps there, so they had a very strong ethos instilled into them about not wasting food and buying everyday basic food very cheaply. I guess they opened up one shop after another in Germany. They made them self-service, which was unheard of in the retail industry back in the 60s. They had 300 stores in Germany by 69. Who are we talking about? No, it was called Albrecht Discounts in the days. And they stocked 700 house brands. Normally a supermarket would stock, if you walk through a supermarket, you're looking at 30,000 line items. Aldi only stock about 700 of the most popular line items. So they've got about 4 times the buying power concentrated into those 700 of a normal supermarket. Sorry, they've got about 20 times the purchasing power because of their limited range. Very strong control, again, because of their limited range over quality and also over their distribution system. When you walk into a store, it's a bit of a mess. There's stuff ripped open and pallets scattered around the floor. Everything's about cost and being very focused on cost here. There's long lines at the checkout, very few staff members at the checkout. You have to bag your own groceries, mainly to save labour for Aldi. They have these exclusive lines of Aldi brands. Home brands from Coles and Woolies are now going this way, but Aldi was doing it back 30 years ago or in the 1960s. You have no more than 2 brands. If they can't get something like Vegemite or Milo and they're protected with their intellectual property, then they'll actually deal with Vegemite and Milo. But do you think the quality of their stuff is any different to the branded product? Does everybody buy Aldi stuff? Yeah. Does it taste almost the same? It is the same. I've got to tell you, I worked in the orange juice business a few years ago with this company up in Brisbane, and they sold their branded product. And honestly, they were a big contract manufacturer, so they did a lot of work for Aldi and Woolies. And honestly, they just stopped the production line. They loaded up a new roll of labels, put on a new set of bottles, and started the production line. The same stuff. So if you think you're buying inferior quality, go to the manufacturers. Anyway, they sell computers and tellies and unusual things through Aldi. When the first store opened in Australia, one of the first shoppers emerged with her weekly groceries, a DVD player and 2 tellies. So it's quite strange, Aldi. Anyway, it's all about cost. They have a very efficient reordering system, a very efficient restocking system. It's next day delivery. Aldi's actually 2 companies. The 2 brothers had a fight. In 1960, one of them wanted to sell cigarettes at the cash register, the other one did not. So the 2 brothers decided, right, I will split the company in 2, and you've got Aldi Nord. Theo is the brother that owns Aldi Nord or Aldi Markt. That's the North operation, so the European and German operation. Aldi Sud, which is what we've got here, is the Southern operation, so that's the US and Australia and a few other countries. They renamed the company from Albrecht Discounts to Aldi in '61. As I said, they split the company. Carl's the one that decided to ban smoking at the cash register. That's the one that's here. Now their head office has 150 staff. Do you think that's, and they don't have any legal department or human resources department. Do you think to run a company that size would be, is that a bit lean, 150 staff? Yeah. Absolutely. It's, everything's focused on cost. They don't want to employ a lot of, if you've only got 150 staff, do you need a human resources department? No. Usually you need a human resources department to look after the human resources department. Yeah. So that's very lean. And they're turning over 58 billion in 2008. They've got 9,000 stores. They open a new one every week. I know it's lean because a guy called Angus Rain also did my course. I teach it in a different format externally. And Angus Rain, who runs the Rain and Hoard, said when he deals with Woolworths and Coles and he finds a property for them to develop, he'll get on the phone to them or send them an email and won't get a response for months. Yeah? When he deals with Aldi, he'll go straight into the head office, pick up the phone, ring Germany, and have the response the next day. That's how quick it is, because they've got no staff or no bureaucracy to deal with. Anyway, Theo was kidnapped. It's very difficult to get a picture of these two brothers because Theo was kidnapped for 13 days in 71, held for ransom of $3 million, and they travel in black limousines with black glass, and they live in fortified castles because of that. This is how cost-focused they are. Theo, after the kidnapping, petitioned the German government to get a tax break on the ransom. Karl, in 2010, was the richest man in Germany at 26 billion. This was the guy that supported smoking. Theo, he died. Anyway, but about a year ago. So that's value. Let's have a look. I'm going to skip to brand. Let's have a look at an engineer that has gone the other way. He's the richest man in France, just like they're the richest in Germany. But Bernard was born in northern France in 1949. He was an engineer. He was actually a civil engineer, and he was in the construction business. He started building timeshare accommodation on the French Riviera, but when the French socialists came to power in '81, he decided to move to the US because he didn't like the government and the regulations. So he started building condominiums in Florida and learned about the US can-do attitude. After the socialists in France quieted down, he came back in '84 to France, and he bought a luxury goods business. He used 15 million of his family's money, together with 65 million from other investors, to buy this thing called Cossack Textiles, which was a bankrupt textile consortium. Any ideas? You probably never heard of him, but he's an engineer, a civil engineer. Anyway, he sold off the textile company and kept this unprofitable brand called Christian Dior. He reduced the workforce, he halved it, he basically slashed it. Engineers are quite good at that. And then he then sold one of the nappy companies. So he bought the thing for 165 million, cleaned it up, sold one of the companies, a nappy business, for 400 million. It netted for him. He then used that to take over LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moët Hennessy, for 1.8 billion. So he got some more investors in to go and buy that. So he, this civil engineer owns all of those brands in the world. It was one of the roughest takeovers in France's history. He went and sacked all of LVMH's top executives. And then he made a series of other hostile takeovers to build his stable of brands. He's got a reputation as a corporate brand. So there might be hope for you guys. Yeah. Bernard Arnault, that's who we're talking about, buys a traditional brand or company that's got some heritage and history. He then removes a lot of the creative people and puts in business people to make sure the company runs well. He brings all manufacturing back in-house to make sure that it's delivering good quality goods. He brings all distribution back in-house and has his own branded retail outlets. He then gets a good celebrity to endorse his products. It takes him about, he reckons, 10 years to develop a very profitable brand through an expensive advertising campaign. When he acquired Givenchy, he removed Hubert de Givenchy and replaced him with a creative bad boy designer. He did the same at Dior. He doesn't care about the creativity much. He's more interested in creating a business. And when he hires executives, he puts out 100 ties in front of an executive, asks them to pick 10. So they've got to have some fashion sense to pick the right 10, otherwise you don't advance in the interview process. But he's more interested in rather than your creativity, hiring you for your business skills and commerce skills. He's built a $54 billion empire. He's got the most prestigious luxury brands in the world. He's even got DFS, Veuve Clicquot, Tag Heuer, 2,400 retail stores worldwide, and richest person in France. Okay, we'll have a look at location now, or distribution. Now, when we look at Coca-Cola, I'm going to look at Pepsi-Cola. That's how you deliver. The cola concentrate companies sell the concentrate to the bottling companies. The bottling companies distribute it through vending machines, retailers like convenience stores and supermarkets, and through foundries. The fountains are owned by either Coke or Pepsi, the cola company, so they own the distribution system. Out in the fast food restaurants, the hotels, the bars, that's all owned by the cola companies. And the distributors make about 75% on the stuff going through that, so they make very good money indeed. The vending machines, they're all either owned by Coke or Pepsi or Schweppes. So again, all those distribution channels are tied up by exclusive contracts. If you look at the supermarkets, they only make about 20% gross margin, and that's really where it competes at the supermarket level. So there's a bit of price discounting goes on there. In the small retailers in the convenience stores, those fridges are either owned by Schweppes or Coke or Pepsi. So these impulse fridges, again, are owned by the bottling companies. Not too much competition there. Pepsi Cola merged with a snack food company called Frito-Lay in '65 to form PepsiCo. Pepsi had won the battle in the supermarket. Remember, they were winning because they had bigger bottles. They won the battle in the supermarket. Coke was winning the fountain war in the restaurants and the hotels. So what did Pepsi do to try to counter Coke's dominance in the fountains? Any idea? Yep. They bought restaurants, exactly, yeah. They ended up buying Pizza Hut, and then Pepsi bought Taco Bell, and then KFC. What did Coke, so that's vertical integration. It's also diversification, because what does a cola manufacturer and distributor know about a fast food business? And the fast food business, there's no margin in it. It's very, very lean margins in fast food. Coke all they did was go to McDonald's, Wendy's and Hungry Jack's and say, you've got a competitor in the market called Pepsi that owns KFC, why would you deal with them? And they locked them out of the fountain business. And indeed, Coke's CEO in 1996 said, how Coke is kicking Pepsi's can, I don't even need to look at them very much anymore. And when you see something like that in the marketplace, Coke thinks it's won the war. That's when it's the most weak, because you can find another weakness in their script. Anyway, Pepsi decided they couldn't run these restaurants because they were cash hog businesses, very low profit margins in fast food. So Pepsi spun them off as a company called Yum, put them all together and spun them off and listed them as Yum. So they got rid of their diversification because it cost them too much money. They then went and bought Smith's chips, both in the UK and here in Australia. And then in the US, what they did was they tried to, wherever there was snack food such as chips sold, they also tried to put their Pepsi alongside it and force the distribution channels to change the way they stack the things on the shelf. So it's about location. What's the number one product in a supermarket, in Woolies or Coles today? What's the number one going through there? Milk? No. Number one product going through supermarkets today.
Junk food.
Starts with C, sounds like Oak. Yeah, Coke. Number one in Woolies and Coles. They sell more of that than they sell anything else. Yeah. How about convenience stores? What's the number one product in 7-Eleven and the convenience stores? Coke's number two. That's number one. Coke's number two. Yeah, so that's how dominant the cola market is. Anyway, what Pepsi did was it refocused on the substitutes. It had lost the war in cola, in carbonated cola. So it started to think about the substitutes. It bought Quakerades, not the Quakerades, but they own Gatorade. And what Pepsi was doing is focusing not just on carbonated drinks, but on isotonic sports drinks and bottled water and all these energy drinks and substitute drinks. They're sort of growing, they're on the up, and carbonated cola's coming down. So if you look at the way the beverage market looks, that's the way carbonated soft drinks in 2007 were about half, but bottled water is number two, fruit juice is number three, and then there are all these other new drinks coming through, and that's where the market's moving to. Pepsi decided, let's get either the number one or number two brand in every one of those substitute markets, and they did. That's the real star for them, Gatorade in the sports drink market. If you look at the way Pepsi defines its market, they say forget about cola. That's the cola market. Coke's got 42%, Pepsi's got 31%, Schweppes is 15%. Let's forget that. Let's think about just beverages. And Pepsi's the leader with 26% if you include the energy drinks and bottled water. Coke's 23%. So Pepsi redefined the market the way they looked at it. That's using location. Let's have a look at relationships. This is yet another case study. This is about a company that makes this stuff, laminates. And I was in this company running New South Wales for them in 1995. Laminate was not used here at all back in the 1930s. It was used in automobiles for timing gears in engines. They used this hard laminated surface as a way of making these timing gears, which was great when the auto industry was booming along in the 30s. Does anybody know what laminate's made out of? This surface here? What's that made out of? What's it? Anyone know? Petroleum byproducts? No. There is a resin in it, or a glue that sticks the thing together.
Melamine?
Sorry?
Is that melamine?
Melamine, yes. Yeah. But it's actually 7 sheets of paper glued together, and the top sheet of paper is the colour, and they use this glue to stick it together. Now, after the auto boom, they found better technology to use in timing gears. So in the 50s, they moved into decorative surfaces. What are we going to use this for? We'll use it for decorative surfaces. And Laminex was the generic name for this stuff. In the 60s, they floated, and then ACI, Australian Consolidated Industries, bought them. And then VTR Nolex bought ACI, so that's how it moved. Now, the products that they make was the laminate itself, that coloured, this coloured surface here. They made that. They also made MDF, medium density fibreboard. What you do is you chop up the wood chips very, very finely into fibres and then glue them together. It's a much stronger board. The other thing they do is make particle board or chipboard. So they put trees through a sawmill, chop them up, and it's mainly waste products that they use and their own plantations, and then glue them together to make particle board. Where's laminate used, really?
Cover chipboard and...
Yep. You glue them onto chipboard and MDF and produce that. Tables, that would be one use. Where else? Where's it? Kitchens. Mainly in kitchens. Whereabouts in kitchens would most of it get used?
Benches.
Bench top is the secondary use. What's the primary? In the carcass and the doors. Yeah, in the white stuff inside. That's where most of it gets used. But the doors are another one. What else? Any other uses? Sorry? Doors? Yep. Oh, flooring. Yes, that is also a version of laminate. All that new wooden floors, you lay it over your old floor. That's also a big product of Laminex. Yeah. Flooring. Sorry. Bathrooms. Whereabouts in bathroom? Toilet petitions in public bathrooms. Absolutely. Go and have a look at the toilet petitions. It's all laminate or Laminex. So absolutely. You've got most of it, kitchens, wardrobes, office furniture. Here's one that you probably don't know, poker machines. Aristocrat was our biggest customer here in New South Wales. This was back in the days when I was there, 1995, where poker machines, did you swipe your credit card in a poker machine then? What did you do? You put a coin in and you pull the handle. That was how far back that was, yeah? What happens is, the leagues clubs, if you're going to knock off a leagues club, a poker machine, these guys in balaclavas would come in at night, turn the poker machine around, get a sledgehammer and bang the back of it. It was usually made of tin, and then get all the coins. They could take them home. We made this thing called HD3, high density particle board. It was stronger than steel. So no matter how hard you hit it with a sledgehammer, all you got was the recoil of the sledgehammer. It just would not break. That's where Aristocrat bought a lot of that stuff to secure their poker machines. If you've been to a sports store, if you look at the retail walls, they've got these shoes sitting on the walls. That's called slat wall. That was another major customer of ours. All the retailers would buy the slat wall too. Customers are kitchen cabinet makers, shop fitters, builders, architects, a whole bunch. It's pretty much the whole of the civil construction industry would buy laminate and particle board. Our competitors, Formica was a company called CSR, was a major competitor to Laminex. It was about the same size as Laminex. There was another company called Wilson Art, and then there was an Italian import called Abet Laminati. That was the mill down in, I think that was Gympie, up in Gympie. The paper we imported, we actually made the paper, the top paper we import, we turned it into laminate in Cheltenham. We had some quality issues down in the Cheltenham factory. And the mill, there were mills in Ballarat, Wagga and Gympie. They were very green. We recycled all the water. We reused it many times. Also, all the stuff in the forest that people left behind after they logged the forest, we'd come through and get all of the rubbish and ship that up. So we're quite green. And all the other timber that we used were our own forests. So we did a recycling program. It was quite a green operation. In '95, the revenue in Laminex was 220 mil. The thing I was looking after was 90 mil. The building industry was in a major cyclical downturn. Remember the economic cycles? It was going down. In fact, it was going down by about 25%. Here's the distribution structure. In Sydney, the blue dots are where we had the warehouses. We had Gosford, we had DY, that's Caringbah there, and St Mary's. So we have an inner circle. This is a typical distribution structure for a building industry. Then we had another circle on top of that, Newcastle, Wollongong, it was Unanderra, and that was a bit further out, I forget, Ingleburn or something like that. And then we had yet another big circle, Coffs Harbour through to Tamworth, through to Orange, Canberra, and down here in Dalmeedy, we have these warehouses. Now, there's the difference. There's our major competitors. We're about the same size. We've both got colour laminate. We've both got white laminate. We've both got the same products. We made a mistake in one of the mixes in our particle board. We developed this thing called FireGuard. One of the chemists put in too much boric acid when they were pressing the board together, when they were making the resin. And so we got the mixture wrong. So we had to discard a pack of this particle board with excess boric acid. And what we did was burnt it. And the thing wouldn't burn. And we thought, we've discovered FireGuard, which, I mean, is that a good thing? Yes. Where do most fires start in a house? In the kitchen. And it's okay if the fire's there. As soon as it gets either into the ceiling or in behind the wall, you've lost your house. You can't stop it. So if you could slow down this and control the fire, then it's a very good thing. So we discovered FireGuard by accident by putting in a bit too much boric acid. The other thing was, sorry?
How does this tie in with your green policy? We've got some left over.
I know. Green was pretty black or dark green in those days. This is 1995. We didn't give a shit. Also, I had a spare factory down in Caringbah. It was next to our major operation. And we weren't using it, so I decided, well, most kitchens have standard size cupboards. Now in Bunnings you can get flat pack kitchens now, can't you? Back in 1995 this was unheard of. All of the chippies and the people out there making kitchens wouldn't ever buy stuff like that. They'd want to cut it and make their own kitchen sizes. Anyway, so I decided let's cut up the laminate, let's cut up all the white laminate and try to make these pre-cut kitchens and get that into the industry. We were about 15% more expensive than CSR. They were a volume discounter. They were shipping lots of white laminate. They've done a very good job there. We had the generic name of Laminex, and they had Formica. We bought Formica worldwide except for Australia. So in the end, in CSR, 5 years down the track, they'd run out of the sourcing paper and colours. So that was going to be a problem for them. Let's have a look at some other things. Service, we both had next day delivery. When you're in the building industry, you're always running out of stuff, so we had to have warehouses everywhere so that the carpenters and cabinet makers could come and pick up some more materials. We both replaced damaged stock. Warehouses everywhere. Our merchandising was hopeless. We had our own delivery vehicles. They were using contractors. So we had Laminex trucks. They had contract drivers. The reason they did was they were moving to a central warehouse where they could put in a call centre and ship off particle board the next day to a much smaller warehouse. So that worried us because that meant they could even reduce their prices even further. So that was a bit of a concern. We both had distributed manufacturing. We had quality problems. We had bent boards and paper tears. And, when you're got a kitchen bench top, you might get a little tear in the surface when you're producing it through the mill. And if they're not careful, the carpenter, when they're putting a bench top in, they might miss it and cut it and install the bench top. Or even worse, a flake of paper in the process of deposit on top of the surface and then get glued onto it. Yeah, you understand? So that was bad. What does a kitchen cabinet maker normally do when what happens is the lady or husband of the house would come home, automatically see that and then complain? What would you do? What? Blame the supplier, which is us, and we'd have to go and do something about it. Normally know what happens. What does the carpenter do? Cut around it. What they do is they insert a cutting board, a tailor-made cutting board. They cut that bit out and put in a plastic cutting board there. Yeah. Anyway, so we've got a few quality problems, but that's the real differences. I'll put them all on one screen. So let's have a look. What would you do? You come in. You're doing it's a $90 million operation that you've got, and you want to take it to 100 million. You're on a downturn, so it might go to 70 million. What would you do to build this operation and get it to 100? Which one would you push? They're the differences there between CSR and quality. Our quality is not so good. Have a look at these differences here. Which one would you target?
The pre-cut.
Pre-cut, we did. We pushed pre-cut kitchens, but the building industry is very, very slow to change. Now you can get them everywhere, but it just took a lot of re-education of. And the other thing is, you go to a workshop and say, hey, you can save a lot of money. That means they can get rid of a lot of people, and they really didn't want to do that. So that's got to be a very slow evolution. Yeah? We didn't try pre-cut. Well, we did, but we didn't push it as hard. What else would you push? Fire guard? Who said fire guard? That's what we got off and pushed straight away. Fire guard. Yep. Only problem was, and we went up to Newcastle and we signed up Barnsley's, which was the biggest kitchen cabinet maker up in Newcastle. We did the same in Wollongong. We were starting to really move fire guard in the market, blitz it. Only problem was, what we hadn't realised was the boric acid made the chips not hold together as strong. So it was a bit weak. So if you slammed the door of the kitchen cupboard, it'd fall off. And that wasn't so much of a problem, but you put a wall oven into, one of those big, you put it into a big kitchen carcass, yeah? And the wall oven would be mounted here. And in Newcastle, about 3 o'clock in the morning usually happened, you'd have this big bang where the wall oven would fall through the kitchen carcass because it couldn't hold the... Anyway, so we stopped selling fire guard and had to do a bit of a product recall there. Anything else that you'd try? That worked, but not for long.
Reorganize your delivery.
Sorry?
Reorganize the delivery.
What would you do about your delivery?
Outsource it instead.
But they've outsourced it. Contract drivers, you think we should outsource it?
It'll cut down your costs.
Sorry?
It'll come down.
Cut down your costs, spoken like a true engineer. Well done. Yeah. I did the opposite to that. Yeah. Which is, I focused on this one, but not outsourced it, really invested in it. Yeah, really invested in it. What I've done with Laminex is the first 2 months I spent on the back of the trucks delivering board and learning about the truck drivers, and you go in and deliver laminate, glue and board into the shop floor rooms and meet all of the customers. I realised how customer unfriendly you were. But when I was delivering the board with the drivers, I learned that these drivers were getting a lot of technical questions, like how does this bend? What's the tensile strength of this laminate? And I'm thinking, geez, these are quite complex questions. And the drivers have been there 20, 30 years and they can answer everything. I thought, CSR, what have they got? What sort of drivers have they got? Can they answer these questions?
No.
No. So what I did was I then invested in their product knowledge and took them on familiarisation trips down to the mills. We went down to Cheltenham and saw them making the laminate. We went up to Gympie, up to Queensland, and saw how the operation worked there, and increased their technical skills. Then, while I was doing that, I attended a CSR trade night. Do you know what a trade night is? CSR is our major competitor, remember? You know what a trade night is? Yeah, that's right. You sit down, all of the cabinet makers and the kitchen makers come in with their wives or husbands, and you sit down and they show you your new products. And I snuck into the CSR trade nights thing to have a look at what was going on. And I sat there for about an hour and looked around, and a lot of people were asleep. It was really boring. Yeah. So, and just by coincidence, I happened to go out to a restaurant that same week in Bulletin Place called Alfredo's. Has anybody been to Alfredo's? It's an Italian restaurant in Bulletin Place. And the difference between this restaurant is the waiters come and sing to you. So when they're delivering you food, pizzas and stuff, they're singing to you. So that night, I choreographed a Laminex trade night. What I wanted to do was try to tell everybody about our drivers and how good they were and their technical skills. So we got them to do a different sort of trade night. Now, whenever you're going to do something scary in the market, you pick a warehouse that is quite remote, and we picked Dalmini. Because nobody we had that warehouse down there, so if the trade night was a disaster, nobody would hear about it. So we tried that, and our first event was a tug of war. We got everybody dressed into different coloured t-shirts. We gave them each a t-shirt. We separated, because usually they come in and sit together, the wives and husbands sit together, and so that separated everybody. And then our first event was a tug of war, and they played that. And the second event, that's the looking down on the warehouse floor. There's the stage we built out of a chipboard. And we marked out 4 squares on the warehouse floor, 4 big squares. And inside was a red kitchen, a blue, a green, and a yellow kitchen. Prefabricated, disassembled kitchen. Remember, we're trying to market the fact that you can flat pack kitchens. Yeah. Now, normally it would take a day and a half to build a kitchen from word go, but we had these flat pack kitchens, so we made a red one, a yellow one, etc. And we had a game where 2 guys would jump into the square with a drill and a few other things, and they'd screw the kitchen together. I think about 25 minutes was the record, and they had it screwed together. But what they were doing is they're trying to compete for winning Laminex money by doing this. And people started stealing. The blue team would steal doors from the red team's kitchen and hide them, and it was getting a bit out of control, but they were having a lot of fun. In fact, they had so much fun at Dalmini, we realised we brought the alcohol out too early. Because one guy had screwed his arm to one of the doors, and he was so cut he went to walk away, and he hadn't realised he had to unscrew himself. Anyway, so we modified it a little bit, but by the time we got to the... the object of these games was to win Laminex money. And we had these 10 mystery boxes set up on stage, on our chipboard stage. There were 10 boxes on, and we had an auction, and somebody had started bidding at $2, and we said sold, opened the box, and inside it was a trip up to the Whitsundays, which kind of got everybody's attention, and then they started really vigorously bidding for prizes. And we had Mitre saws, high quality Mitre saws. We also had some really dumb things, in there, like silly clocks and a rubber chicken. In fact, in the industry, the folklore got back to us that one guy said he had a rubber chicken nailed above his workshop door, and he said, "I bid $250,000 for this rubber chicken." Anyway, by the time we wrote a song about Laminex, about all the bad things about Laminex. We're taking the mickey out of ourselves, and we got up there and performed it. I got up there on stage and we sang this song. We had a guy on the guitar and all of our branch people, our own people, doing a singing and dance routine in front of... Now that takes a lot of guts in front of all these builders to go and sing and dance. But by the time we got to the metropolitan warehouses in St Mary's and Carringbar, we had crowd control organised because it was so popular. We won the award for the best performing business unit in BTR Nolix worldwide. CSR responded by hiring professionals and doing another trade show. Do you think that worked?
No.
It's because we did it, not the professionals. Yeah, the professional trade show absolutely bombed. Also, we had a strike, a picket line incident where the guys striked for 3 days, and there were about 300 people that I was employing in New South Wales, and we had about 10 union members left. The reason is I was teaching these guys to dance and sing, and it's a long story. But the post-mortem for if you've ever had a strike pulled on you, it's really strange because when you drive through the picket line, you look around and look for all of the people that you're employing, and there are all these people with like, you know, jewellery and like nails in their head. People you've never seen before. They're professional picketers or professional strikers. Anyway, that's the rest. Have a good one.